Please join with me in welcoming Dr. Anika Molesworth.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is such a joy to be here with you at TropAg in Brisbane. What a fabulous conference it has been so far. We had a beautiful dinner last night and, incredible food right now. And what a joy it is to talk about food and farming and environments while eating such delicious and nutritious foods. So my name is Anika Molesworth and I live on a property out in Western New South Wales on beautiful Williakali country. And today I'm going to talk about stories, science, and the stars. So far from city lights, out on the farm, the night skies shimmer with stars. The universe is made of stories, not atoms, wrote the poet Muriel Rukeyser, and I love stories. As a writer and environmental scientist, I love creating worlds through words. One fascinating ancient story that is found around the globe describes the 7 stars in the Pleiades constellation, often describing 7 sisters fleeing from hunters. Yet if we look to the night skies today, only 6 stars shine. Modern science tells us that that 7th star burnt out over 100,000 years ago. This is a marvel of how human story endures. Here we are on this incredible planet, the only one we know like it, in infinite time and darkness, an anomaly of extraordinary proportions. Every poem ever spoken, every song ever sung, every love letter ever written, all created right here on our beautiful planet with ugly problems. A climate crisis, an extinction crisis, an apathy, it's all about me crisis. A world that feels at times like it's at the point of collapse. Yet I'm here to tell you that that end is not inevitable. And with hope in one hand and courage in the other, we can create a better future. Because true hope is a discipline, not an emotion. It's about confronting reality with integrity, persistence, and courage to create something better. And when we confront life's challenges, define what really matters, and take responsibility for our actions, I believe we can rediscover hope for our future. So my world is my farm, but out in the paddock we face another dry year. We've sold off our livestock. In lieu of rain, clouds of dust float along the skyline, rust red, corroding the blue horizon. Birds that used to colour the skies and sing music from the trees have all but disappeared, and that silence pains me. But what pains me more is that my story is not unique, because across the country and across the world, we see farmers with their fields blowing away in drought, drowning in flood, burning in flames, a climate in collapse. When we see these challenges, we're often confronted and we feel overwhelmed. But what I'm here to tell you is that end is not inevitable. When we tell ourselves that things are going to be okay, we can often feel a bit delusional. Are we trying to trick ourselves? We say things will be okay, don't worry, reduce, reuse, recycle, buy green, buy clean, buy now. We can buy our way out of this problem. Sustainable growth has budgeted for an economy of blind ignorance. We elect politicians that will do something, surely this time, and then another scientific report lands with a thud. Head and hands, tears and eyes, a problem became an emergency, became a crisis, and now things have become pretty bleak. And we feel overwhelmed. irritable and apathetic. Misinformation, disinformation, denial, choose your dish. The media reflects our fears back on themselves in this feedback loop that serves to feed those fears, consume our hope, edging us closer to giving up. Cynicism whispers, it's too complicated, it's too late. Let the social architects and oligarchs have their way. What are we to do even if we wanted? Hand shaking, hand clapping, finger pointing, finger wagging, we've tried it all. The clickbait titles tell us the future is either apocalyptic or candy cane. Both encourage us to look away. We congratulate and condemn. We pray and we plead, but nothing seems to change as fast as we so desperately want and need. And that future we grew up thinking was guaranteed no longer seems so. It's true that I can't offer salvation, but nor will I tell you the end is bleak, because that end has not yet been determined. What I can tell you is that we are not powerless, we are not hopeless or helpless. The story is not written for us, it is written by us. And because of that, there is hope. Because every day is a chance to act. The idea that it is too late or too difficult to act on the climate crisis is a lie that only serves to benefit the same system destroying the planet. Know this, every day matters, every choice matters, every fraction of a degree matters. All of our actions matter. When we look back at the course of human history, we see that greatest hope often arises at times of greatest suffering and uncertainty. Why? Because this is when meaning is magnified, when purpose is most profound, when shallow values like status and wealth and validation no longer sustain us, and instead care, compassion, selflessness take flight. The author Emily Dickinson wrote that hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings a tune without words that never stops at all. A bird within us that sings the loudest and the sweetest songs during the storm and the gale. And to be clear, I'm not talking about passive hope or naive optimism, waiting for someone to do something. I'm talking about active hope. The kind of hope with calloused hands and dusty boots. The kind of hope that keeps planting, testing, trialing, farming, even when the outcome is uncertain. True hope is having a vision for the future and then taking the active steps to make it a reality. And that kind of hope takes courage. Hope and courage are tools as vital as sunlight and rain. They shift us from a shadow of uncertainty that paralyzes or denies reality to a state where we are actively and consciously cultivating a future that is worth living in, a future that is worth fighting for, a future that is worth passing on. Out on my farm, when the rains do return, the birds flock in their thousands. The skies shimmer with golds and greens and pinks. The trees fill with song. That moment reminds me that life is waiting just beyond our sight. For me, that is when hope becomes visible. The returning birds also teach me something else, that hope requires action to take flight. And on my family farm, we're living that lesson. We have established conservation reserves to protect rare and threatened species. We have shifted our grazing practices to focus on biodiversity conservation. We have established solar panels to power our home and charge our electric vehicles. We have opened our farm gates for researchers running trials. Yes, these are small steps, but they are part of a bigger picture. Because across the country and across the world, I see farmers choosing courage over comfort. They are drawing carbon back into the soil through reforestation and regenerative grazing. They are generating income through solar and wind projects while cutting emissions. They are cutting methane from livestock with better breeding and feeding. They're feeding the world while looking after it too. These aren't ideas for tomorrow. They're happening in paddocks today around the world. And the good news is that we all play a part in these solutions, because the climate crisis doesn't stop at the farm gate. It impacts the food prices in our supermarket. It impacts the nutrition in every bite the children take. It impacts whether the foods we love are on the shelf or not. But the good news is, when we make climate-conscious choices, we flip the problem. We become part of the solution. By choosing to eat local, nutrient-dense and native foods, by choosing to reduce food waste, refuse single-use plastics, choosing to pay a fair price for farmers, to give farmers the financial resources to farm in ways that heal, not harm the planet. Everyone's choices matter. Everyone's choices are essential. We know these are challenging times, and we could let fear and apathy define our story, or we could choose hope and courage. Climate projections only offer us possibilities and probabilities. It is up to us to determine what the future will truly be. And because of that, there is hope. So when we look to the stars out there on the farms where we live and work, and we consider our story stretching long behind us and far in front of us, we reflect on our responsibility at this moment in time. The seventh star in the Pleiades constellation burnt out over 100,000 years ago, but humans are still telling its story. So what will future generations tell of us? Will they say that we were the generation who chose courage over comfort, action over apathy, hope over despair? That choice is ours. That moment is now. So what will you do? What choices will you take? What actions will you make? Because somewhere out there, the birds are waiting to shimmer across the skies again, returning music and life, visible hope taking flight from our courage. So with courage in one hand and hope in the other, let's write a story our planet deserves. Thank you. Sit.
So can you hear me on this one? Perfect, that's great. So we do have another roving mic here that Kara's going to bring around. So if anyone's got some questions for Anika, please pop your hand up and we'll come to you. Really inspiring presentation, inspiring talk. Thank you so much. You're speaking to a room of scientists, and talking to scientists about hope and courage isn't really normally what we talk about. We talk about impact factors and grant funding and trying to survive in what is a fairly cutthroat, I would say, environment for young scientists. So why do you think it's important for us to have hope and courage? I suppose you've described some of that, but if you're speaking to young people in the room who are researchers trying to develop a career for themselves, what is the hope and courage that you think they need to be having?
Yeah, well, it's something that I've personally reflected on a lot because, as a scientist, we spend a lot of time looking at the data and the evidence, and sometimes it can feel pretty overwhelming and depressing at times too. We see these climate reports or these national assessment reports coming out and we go, gosh, we need to turn this ship around. We need to look after the land, the water, the biodiversity, everything we hold dear and precious. How do we do it? And how do we do it for the long run too? What's that personal resilience look like? And so I've reflected a lot on, why am I hopeful? How do I hold on to hope when we are tackling, everyone in this room is tackling some of the biggest issues our world faces, feeding a hungry world and a climate-challenged world. These are huge issues. But I think there are a lot of reasons to hold on to hope. And another short story I'd love to, tell is that of the ancient myth of Pandora. So the ancient Greek myth, you have probably all heard of it. She opened the lid and out came misery and death and illness and all the miseries into the world, and Pandora quickly shut the lid of the jar and only one thing remained in there, and that was hope. And of course with stories there's a lot of ways to interpret them, but I think of this story as the world is full of challenges, and this story talks about humans, pushing boundaries and questioning and asking and, testing and trialing. But she closed and she retained hope in that jar. And that is something that we all carry through life with us. Even though there are challenges, even though there are miseries and suffering, we carry hope within us. And that's what's going to get us through and solve some of those challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone? Caro, have you got a question there? Sorry, I can't see any hands up. If you've got a hand up, wave it out. That's okay. So, you've got one?
Thanks, Anika. That was. It was poetry what you said, as well as actually being very factual. You talk about hope in people's hearts. Some of the world is run by people where I don't think hope exists, and there's greed. So how do we, as a group of scientists, where hope is actually what we do a lot, because we do apply for grants. Hope is something that drives a lot of what we do. So how can we actually turn that narrative around from greed to hope being what the future has in store for us?
Yeah, so I come to a conference like this and this absolutely recharges me, because I listen to the presentation, I was like, oh my gosh, we've solved the world's problems. Everyone here is doing such incredible work, finding such incredible answers to challenges. And we need your voices out there, impacting policy and business and influencing, general public discourse. So something that I'm really passionate about is science communication and making sure people understand, the fantastic work that researchers are doing, what we are learning, and how this would have positive real-world impact. So how do we shift, greed to altruism? I'm not too sure exactly, but I think communicating our learnings, our ideas, the solutions that are being generated by brilliant people that are in this room and beyond is so needed. And that's where we're going to see transformative global change that will look after our planet and the people.
We have another one over here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anika, for inspiring us and giving us hope. You are farming, and I'm looking at a triangle with 3 ends. The social part, I can see you inspire people. The environmental part, you give back to the planet. Where do the resources come from for sustaining your farm that you've opened up for research, and you need to live too? So how do you balance that?
Could you just repeat the last bit of that
Where
question?
do the resources for maintaining a sustainable farm like the one you're running come from? How do you finance your operations?
Yeah, sure. So we have a property in far western New South Wales near Broken Hill. We have faced drought for a fair few number of years, which is a common story in far western New South Wales. So at the moment we've destocked our property, so we're not actually running sheep at the moment. But I live there with my parents and my husband and my 1-year-old. And apart from the 1-year-old, the rest of us have off-farm interests as well. So I think it's that income diversification that's what sustains and enables us to live on that farm. Yeah.
Thank you, Anika. That was a wonderful talk. I'd love to hear your thoughts on trust, how trust fits into your talk about hope.
Yeah, trust is so important, and I think we've seen an eroding of trust. Heather and I were just having this conversation over lunch. So yeah, reinstating that trust for researchers and science and scientific, institutes of science is so important. And I think, again, that comes down to communication, to advocate for what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, why you can actually trust the evidence that is being produced. There's a lot of work here because, as I mentioned in my talk, there's misinformation and disinformation. There's an overwhelming amount of information on social media and beyond, and people do feel overwhelmed by it. So I think having trusted voices, trusted messages, and equipping people with, good information and good knowledge, so they can have good dialogues about tricky topics like climate change. And, our most trusted messengers, it's not me or the politician on screen or whoever, it's the person you sit across at the dinner table. It's your family and friends who you trust. And so making sure that we can reach people where they are and equip them with good information to have these, these difficult conversations sometime is a real challenge, but something that we all need to be working on. Thanks.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, certainly universities are at an all-time low in terms of public trust, and the fact that we work so closely with industry as well, sometimes the dirty industry money that we work with on real-world problems is sometimes gives people the perception that somehow we've got industry in our pockets and that our research isn't really as truly honourable and above board as it maybe once was. But it really, as you were saying, communication is really key to that, and to compete with those other messages is so important as a researcher now. Without the ability to communicate clearly your messages to the audiences that you need to reach, well, you won't be funded, but you won't get those messages across for change that we really, really need. Carol, I can't see you there.
I've got one here. Hi. Hi Anika. I'm so pleased to have been able to be here and hear you, having seen you through your journey to this point. I'm sitting here at one of two tables of very young, or not very young, but certainly young researchers from around the globe probably. And I'm just wondering, I know that you've been involved in a number of the Crawford Fund's Next Gen activities. I'm wondering what advice you would have for the young researchers in the room. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. So I think the young researchers, share your stories, why you love science, the difference your science is making in the world. And, you might hear a lot, publish or perish, throw that out the window, I say. There's so many ways to communicate which can be really impactful, and you can reach a lot of people. So, using social media platforms, or, writing poetry, doing slam poetry, creating videos, there's so many different ways that we can share what we're generating through those years of research. And it's really important to find ways to communicate, in novel ways, in impactful ways, in ways that surprise, add humour, if you wish. Visuals are terrific. I think so often we sort of, especially as young researchers, we sit back and we think, oh, I don't have the expertise, someone else, has the authority on this, I shouldn't, or we make up other excuses too. I don't have the time, I'll do it later when I've got more finances, and we just wait and wait and wait. Well, the problems in the world are getting worse and worse and worse, so we don't have time to wait. So I would say, get on with it, stand up, speak, shout, dance, sing, share the message. Maybe you'll look silly, but who cares? You're trying to change the world. So good on to all the young researchers who are here. Thank you for being here. Keep it up.
Hi, Anika. Thank you for that really good speech, and thank you for trying to give us hope. But I have to admit, I'm a little bit cynical about some of this stuff because, in my own experience working in industry, it just comes down to dollars. And repeatedly, I've tried so hard to get, sustainable practices implemented, and I just get turned away because they don't see the tangible return on investment. So I was wondering, on your farm, what sort of financial benefits have your sustainable practices brought as inspiration for me to potentially convince others in future?
Yeah, I hear you. So yes, the world's so much driven by money. Wow. Please don't give up hope though. So sustainable practices that have benefited my farm and my family financially. So we live in an entirely off-grid home, so we have solar energy, battery, electric vehicles. We use all of our grey water, which is caught from rainwater, to water our garden beds, which are all native garden beds. We remove feral species. We earn an income off that way. So there's ways that we're saving money. And yes, there are sometimes high upfront investments in buying an electric car, an electric buggy, solar panels, batteries, all of that. But then, we never have a fuel bill going forward or an energy bill going forward or a water bill going forward. So we've sort of tried to design our home and lifestyle with a long-term mindset of how do we save that money. And it absolutely is for us. We're a low production, low income property at best. So I'm not the best example. There are some fabulous examples out there in high intense agriculture properties which have done the conversion to renewables and have made whopping financial savings in the energy space. So yeah, there's definitely ways to save money by converting, but yeah, there's often a high upfront investment, yeah.
Hi, amazing presentation. How as scientists communicating to others, but also trying to stay humble with regards to how we interact with people, and as experts in a field, acknowledging that when we're interacting with farmers or others communicating that we're not talking down, but also trying to humble those who might counter some of the things we're suggesting as beneficial, like sustainable stuff, with industry, humbling those leaders there who are experts in their realm so that we can sort of meet at a level playing field.
Yeah, absolutely. So having that respectful dialogue and sharing, good information that we have expertise on, brilliant. So I think when we have conversations with people outside academia, such as farmers or someone on the street, really framing, the question, the conversation around values that person cares about. And so a lot of my conversations with people, I might not talk about climate change, but I talk about, nutrition, which is impacted by, higher temperatures or less rainfall or such and such. So talking about, okay, the nutrition for your child and building a healthy body. So framing the conversation around things that person talks about. Also working out who is their trusted messenger. So maybe it is not me or you, but it is, their child or their grandparent or whoever it is in their social circle. It's their mayor, it's whoever. And how do you communicate to their trusted messenger? So as Heather mentioned, I'm writing a kids book at the moment because I really do believe that kids are the influencers to their parents. And so to have conversations about climate change in their household or in the classroom, you need the kids asking those questions. Hang on, why aren't we doing it this way? How about this or that? Throwing the questions. But yeah, I also think a lot of people believe what they do sometimes out of fear that they're going to lose something. Especially with climate change, it can be quite daunting, and they're worried that they're going to lose cultural identity, they're going to have to move, they're going to lose food sources, whatever it is. And so meeting them where they are, understanding their fears, their concerns, building a good trusted relationship to then dive deeper into, well, how do we together fix this problem? Because we're all in that same ship with climate change. We've got to figure it out together too.
We've got one last question here, Heather, and then I think we're done.
No worries, thanks, Caro. Just before we go there, I will just say what you're talking about is scientists having some soft skills, aren't we?
Yeah.
It's really important in this day and age to be able to communicate with some of those soft skills. And I'd add to what you were saying, you did mention relationship, but to build trust and to help people on the journey, the facts don't always cut it. And the numbers, the figures, the plots that we throw at people as scientists, that doesn't do it. But developing a relationship and, as you mentioned, the word humility, but a relationship built on mutual respect and listening as hard as you're talking, I suppose, or maybe listening more before you talk is really important, I think, to be able to develop relationships and convince people to come on board with your way of thinking. Carrie, one more over there, then we might wrap up.
Thanks. Good afternoon. My name is Gilbert from Zambia in Africa. I very much liked your presentation. It was both soul-lifting, but also very inspiring. Thank you very much. In the context that many of us in here, especially from developing countries working, it takes a bit of effort and a bit of time to move from almost complete hopelessness and deep suffering to hope, and then active hope, and then sustaining the hope, and maturing the hope into sustainability of the interventions, especially if you talk of smallholder farmers often flooded or losing the entire crop due to drought. But this often happens when we create the hope. It also happens that our work is very much project-based in many cases. By the time we are beginning to create active hope, we are moving to new projects. What would be your message, or what would be your message to those who fund research, government agencies, philanthropies, on how they could reimagine their funding modalities, to who and how, to who and what mechanisms can we use based on those funding opportunities to sustain the hope and eventually create sustainability, like the story you've shared. So a message to the funding agencies, how should they reimagine the calls they make, especially in contemporary global dynamics? Thank you.
I didn't get the last, no.
Caro, what was that question there? Could you just didn't quite catch it.
All right, so based on what you've shared, which is very inspirational and soul-lifting, what message you do pitch to the funding agencies, those that fund research, fund adaptation, funding mitigation, to speak to hope, but also to sustain the impact without necessarily making people depend on external actors, like on me working with a farmer. So
So how do we convince the funding agencies?
How should we reimagine the funding mechanism? Not me, but the funding agencies. How do they reimagine the cause for funding that influence the way we work, most of us in this room?
Yeah, sure thing. So, you know, I think everyone is just doing such incredible research. You know, I've been walking into sessions here today and yesterday and, you know, just being amazed at the work that is being done in all corners of the world, which is, you know, helping improve the climate and the environment and food security and nutrition and food availability and all of this. And it's just, you know, it's brilliant, and it is so uplifting to see all the research that is being done here. But I would love to see more funding directed towards how do we get this research better heard by policymakers and business owners and the general person on the street, so they understand, like, these are some really big issues that we're facing as a global society. We've got some ideas and some, you know, solutions on how to overcome them. So yeah, again, I mean, I think a lot comes back to the communication and building the skills of researchers to share their knowledge and evidence. But I think that really needs to be supported by our institutions, whether they're universities or otherwise, to go that, you know, we really need to build the capacity of our researchers to not just talk within conference walls and publish papers, but we need to be talking to real people out there in the fields and on the streets. Because these issues like climate change or species extinction, I mean, they're moving so quickly and in the wrong direction. And we need to be able to talk about these things boldly and confidently and present ideas to change the situation. So if there are any funders in this room, I mean, really do look at where you're putting money and how do we invest more in those soft skills, so people can communicate and influence and advocate for the solutions that are being developed.
Thank you, Anika. We're going to leave that there in terms of questions. But I will just end on this quote. You spoke to me about hope and courage last night. This is a quote from Dr. Kate Marvel. She's a climate scientist in America. So without courage, hope is a creature of privilege. We know things will be lost, but it's comforting to believe that others will bear the brunt of it. We need courage with hope. Courage is the resolve to do well without the assurance of a happy ending. Join me in thanking Dr. Anika Molesworth. Thank you very much. Enjoy your dessert.